Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion and the poobah of Fraser, Sejohn. Sejohn.
Hello, Devon. Hello, everybody.
Sejohn. Hello.
What's going on? How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. I've had some victories already today, so I'm in a good mood.
How did you put it last week? Feeling punchy? Are we still?
No, I'm not punchy. I was punchy last week because I slept and not really slept. I actually got a full night's sleep. I'm feeling good. I'm ready to go. I don't freaking know.
We are ready to take on the world.
I mean, not really. I feel like I have nothing I could talk about because everything I did this past week is currently like on the struck work. I feel a little weird about that. But I could still, we'll still be able to do an episode of the show. It's just all of the fun things I did were related to things that we're not supposed to talk about. So it leaves me with just like the down dregs things that we do definitely have to address because it's something we address on the Say Report. It's weirdly tangential to the things we're not supposed to talk about. I'm just going to leap right in there, and then maybe some fun stuff will come from it. The sub-apocalypse is upon us. It's September, and as much as that used to be a fun little branding thing for Twitch, in the world of streaming media, it seems like September is when they all decide to raise the cost.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so, like, I think this is just, like, it's an interesting thing that we have definitely talked about often on the show, and I'm sure other people talk about in their day-to-day lives and hear other podcasters talking about and that stuff too. So I don't think there's anything that I don't think we're gonna tread any new ground in that regard, right? But I will say that in regards to conversations that we've had on the show, I feel like it wasn't really prophetic. It was obvious this was always going to happen, but it is something we've always talked about, right? Is like, we've mentioned before, like, well, Disney came out, its pricing is so good compared to everything else, it's going to kick everything else's ass. But of course, like, that will only be true as long as the pricing's low, right? Or the other way around, whenever Netflix does something and everybody's like, oh man, this is why the other apps are so much better. And it's like, they're just going to do it too. They're just not going to get as much shit about it because they're not Netflix. We've kind of found ourselves in this, like, cycle, I guess is what I'm getting at. Where, like, one of these apps does something good, and we talk about how that won't last. Or one of these apps does something bad, and we talk about how the rest of them are going to catch up eventually. It's just, like, it's becoming kind of, it's becoming really disheartening, I think is the right word for it.
Yeah, no, and this one is a special September because in addition to all of the streaming services raising their prices, also all of the gaming services have jumped into that. Yeah. So it just feels like I kind of got hit from literally all sides.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to last very long. I don't know, because, like, one of the biggest promises about the sub-service stuff that was out there was the idea of, like, pricing, right? Not necessarily that things were always going to be cheaper, but things would at least all be in one place, which is just not the case anymore, right? Yeah. Because we've talked about with there being a billion different options out there for things. And then on top of that, it is cheap but we're doing a loss. On the other end, we would be somehow getting money, like with Hulu, it was easy, like commercials. Like, it's cheap for the buy-in, but you still have to watch commercials, right? I don't know if we ever figured out what the other side of that was for Netflix and things like that, but also, like, these gaming services. PlayStation Plus, I've never quite understood what benefit PlayStation had in giving us free games every month, other than just having, like, data and information on us, I guess. And information is, like, no joke. Like, that is definitely valuable, but, like, there's only so much information they can get about me as a player over the years before suddenly that well has run dry, right?
Exactly. And I think part of the thing about the free games, that benefit is to PlayStation in a different way in terms of getting games on their platform. Because you understand that if a game is on their platform, then you are potentially opening it up to Sony saying, we want to sponsor this as a game of the month, and then they get some stipend for that. They
Sure,
get a
right,
payment for
but
it.
there's so much in the water now that's anti uh what's the word, the exclusivity, right?
Yeah.
Like people are just like so against that now. Like if a game comes out and says, I mean, and Sony is a perfect example. Like look at everything that happened with Spider-Man in the Avengers game, a game that people weren't even playing and they still felt like talking about it nonstop when it first got announced, you know?
Well, I mean, it was weird because people weren't playing it, and then the argument was, well, I'm not playing it because I can't play as Spider-Man. But you couldn't play
No.
that. It's been out for a year before they
Yeah.
introduced Spider-Man. So if you were playing it and you decided to stop playing it because now the game is holding something from you, I understand that. But you weren't playing it before.
Right, right.
Like,
Well, and like to that point with some of these services, right, is like so much of this stuff, I kind of am curious how many people are still on board with some of them, you know, especially because I don't know how Xbox splits theirs up, divides theirs. But with PlayStation, the way that they've divided their service into all these different options now, I just don't know how many people are on Just Plus or how many people are on this or that because like I don't know what benefits, again, like I don't know what benefits are involved. I feel like we had this exact conversation on the show once
yes,
too.
we've had
Like
this one,
the
yeah.
way that, yeah, the way that things have gotten so convoluted in those that like I'm sure there's a bunch of people that are just washing their hands of it, and that leads to them needing to then raise pricing because they have less people.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the start of it, the whole thing that got my mind kicking around with this was Xbox has eliminated games with gold, right? Gold is gone. There's no more gold tier. There is only Game Pass. But there is just Game Pass, and then there is Game Pass Ultimate. So Game Pass, so if you look at PlayStation, right, with their
Mhm.
Essential, Extra, and Premium, they've
Right.
eliminated the Essential tier. So you just have the Extra and the Premium tier. Both of them include the ability to play games online. The Extra tier, it's a smaller, kind of more cultivated list of games that are available to you. With the Game Pass Ultimate as the premium version, you have every game that's open to Game Pass, and then that also includes like the EA Pass, the Ubisoft Pass, all of these other like collections of games that also pour into it. But also you have every game that's on Game Pass, not like I think it's 20 or 30 that you get with the lower tier. And I'm trying to find the price on that, and I can't right now, unfortunately.
No, of course, because they fucking bury that shit. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I this is not to say that like we shouldn't be upset or we shouldn't, you know, have some come to Jesus moments about whether or not we want to continue. We should like this is not great that this is what's happening to these services because for a lot of people this is like the way that they access the like cultural shit around them, right? Like how many times have we heard people say like I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to that movie, but I'll watch it when it comes to Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for video games, you know, like there's a lot of stuff that comes out that I'm just like I don't know if I have it in my fun budget to spend $60 on this game, $70 nowadays on this game, but like when it comes to PlayStation Plus in a year for Christmas, it'll be a great time. Um, you know, like that is such an essential part of the experience now of consuming this shit that they know that, which is why they're getting away with doing this kind of stuff of this price. I mean, it is slowly starting to turn into price gouging. For some, it already feels that way, you know.
Well, so I mean, one of the things I said I was going to talk about this week was Sea of Stars.
Mhm.
I've played for about 2 hours. And I don't really want to go back to it because I gotta be the big reveal for me this week is that I think I'm canceling Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah.
I just don't use it like at all. So paying for something I'm not using, even with all my plans of like, well, if I complete a game a month, I haven't completed a game for the last 4 months. And then the more discouraging thing, I'd like to go back into Hades, right? With the sequel coming out, I want to play through Hades again. I want to like feel that world. I got it on Game Pass. It was included with Game Pass. So I don't own a copy of Hades. That's not true. I was gifted a Switch copy this past Christmas. But I haven't opened that one up yet. And I don't even know if I'd want to play it on Switch. And well, we can get to why I say that a little bit later. But I want to play Hades again, and now I look at it and it's, well, do I want to buy the Xbox version because I already have a save file there? Or am I okay buying it on a system that like I use more? I
Yeah.
don't love that conversation. And I don't love that even though the prices have gone up $1, like I think it's $1 if I look at it had to have been $2 because it was 1604 and now it's 1818. So I believe that would be a $2 price range based on everything.
Hmm.
Like that extra $2 a month for something I'm not using really makes me say, well, I'm not using this. Let's save that $20. And I know it's not fully $20, but that's what it feels like. In fact, that extra $20 a month, I can have to apply to my yearly PlayStation Plus, because that has gone from $60 to $80 for the year. And hopefully they keep up with it. And I'm only on the lowest level of that. Hopefully they don't
Right.
follow suit and make it so I have to get the extra or the premium. If they eliminate the essential, I will be, well, alienated in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, that's exactly where I'm feeling it too, right? Is like with a lot of these services across the board, there were things that I had access to that I no longer do, and it's because they've split them off or removed them entirely or gotten rid of stuff. I think the dream of streaming is kind of officially dead, right? Not that it won't stick around, not that it won't always be a part of what we do now. It's pretty much baked into everything, right? Like we buy TVs with streaming services just built right into them and things like that. Like I'm not saying streaming's going away. I'm saying that any of the joys or benefits or ways in which we looked to streaming to be the thing that was going to be the consumer friendly option is just not true. And in a lot of ways it never was. It was just kind of always a dream, a hope that it would become that, had the potential to be that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's sad. And then I look at all of the streaming services which are currently not really delivering content. Let's be honest about that. The one thing that I'm looking forward to is a series that will be premiering on October 12th. I'm not going to say the name of, but obviously, if you've listened to the show, you know what I'm talking about.
I definitely have. Yeah, we can't get too deep into talking about specifics because of our block on things, our self-made block on things. Let's
Right.
not act like somebody's like. But anyway, but there is definitely some stuff that has been popping up on services that people have been excited about. But I will say this: it's not across the board, and it's never all at once, right? Like we know of a thing coming in a month we want to watch, say. So like that's cool, but like do I need to go back to when I was like in college and like scraping together like money and like canceling stuff, free trialing stuff, canceling before the free trial's over? Like I just I I take a certain amount of pride in the fact that I now live a lifestyle that allows me to not have to do that. And it sucks to have to go back to that, right?
I mean, it's not even that. It's one of these situations where, like, do I really want to pay for this? Like,
Yeah.
right now, I use pretty much two services are at, like, max. And I feel, and one of them is max. I'll admit that. I have no problem saying that. And they have been delivering content, but it's so weird how they've been delivering content. And you want proof that they were definitely preparing for this. A certain reboot of a show that now feels a little incesty. That's all you're gonna get out of me. No, you're not. In fact, not only does it feel a little incesty, the fact that two characters who dated in the original are now related is a huge fucking plot point. So that's a little weird. But that particular show was completed and ready to go in 2022. So the fact that it just dropped on Max this past week really does reveal how much they were stockpiling for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's kind of something that we talked about really early on with the strike is like I think that a lot of these studios really learned some shit lessons last time around with the strike where they realized like they could strike proof themselves in certain ways, not completely, not entirely. We are definitely seeing was it Warner Brothers that announced another $500 million loss this year that's probably going to be resulted by basically people just not going to movies, and a lot of that, and they're attributing a lot of that to people not knowing about movies right now because nobody's out talking about them. Um, but anyway, like they definitely tried to put some things in place to make sure they weren't completely boned. And lo and behold, things like holding on to shows on the back burner for longer, and leaning into, leaning into certain types of material. There's certain like stand-up specials and things like that that I've noticed that they've really started to push those to the top, as opposed to movies and TV shows that they're not getting right now and things like that.
Well, I mean, one for me, I sent out a tweet at the end of last TV season to Paramount Plus directly, asking why they didn't have the last couple of episodes of a certain show available. And now new episodes are available of that show on the streaming service, including those two that I had asked about. And that's very strange to me. And also how I watched them take down this full season of television that was available as it was airing. They had pared it down to 5 episodes and 5 very random episodes of just that season. And I'm like, oh, they did that so that they can, like, technically, we're not wrong. We say new episodes now available.
Yeah, they can rotate in new shit to bring people back. Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God. Like, as we get closer to when new TV would have started, right? We're recording this on the return of the NFL. Right? It's the first NFL week, and that usually happens a week or two before the new television season. And there's not going to be one of those right now. Or there is.
What is all the advertisement for NFL going to be this year? It's usually the first like few games of everybody's season is like supported by like weird reveal previews of shows coming and things like that.
I don't know. Maybe video games. Maybe like that's where you'll get your first look at the Super Mario RPG remake.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I mean, we know that Assassin's Creed, the next one, is ready to be shown off, and we haven't seen anything from it. Like, honestly, they're going to lean into the places where they can, and I think that's why SAG-AFTRA is like, well, then we'll just strike that as well. We have a finger there that we can put on the scale. Let's authorize us to use that finger if it gets down to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that it's not going to be football every night in absence of television, right?
Yeah, right.
Because Thursday night football...
Let's spread the games out and give everybody every game. Yeah.
Thursday night football. It's so weird. Like, we can talk about this stuff, right? I mean, what I'm talking about is going to be strange. The first 2 months of Thursday night football pass themselves around on over-the-air networks.
Yeah.
Like, it goes in this order so that everybody gets that little taste of the extra ratings of a Thursday night game before they go to paywall only on the NFL network. So, it's gross because it's a wonderful sort of marketing to, like, isn't it awesome watching football on Thursdays? Doesn't this just make your week? And then after 2 months, it's like, oh, you want more of that, though? You got to pay us. You got to make sure that you either have the pass, the
entire concept of this entire endeavor feels like it's a drug. It's like a drug dealer, right? Where they're just like, we taught you that this is what services could be like, and now that you know that, we're gonna just piecemeal, like just rip away parts that you can keep paying us for if you want those, but now it's going to cost more, it's going to cost extra, you're going to have to get more than one service, you're going to have to like, it feels like we had this taste of something good, right? And we've just been chasing that dragon ever since.
But I don't want to pay more for Hulu. What am I getting from Hulu that is worth giving you $2 extra a month? What is that? Disney, what are you doing except for eliminating shows from your service that was supposed to be the holy land of Disney content, except for Song of the South? Like, what I don't know what I'm paying for anymore. And they're then asking me, so now pay us a little bit more too to keep having it. And I know it's something that we've talked about before, but it just feels so different right now when there's no clear path to any sort of resolve for the two major strikes that are going on in Hollywood right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, so you got to pay us more. And it's like, so am I supplementing the money that you guys are losing by paying more for this service right now? Am I your stimulus package? I don't love feeling that way. And also, right, if I am your stimulus package, when they're back to work and you're going to be getting money from advertisers and the like again, are we going to go back to what the price was before you needed an extra $2 from every subscriber? Of course not. Of course, it's just going to stay that price because you've normalized it.
Capitalism taking advantage of a situation in order to get more money and then not being like benevolent with it when times are better. What? No. How
yeah,
can, like,
yeah. No, I know what I'm preaching. It's just
no. I what I'm saying is like this is exactly to what I was saying about the idea that the dream of streaming being that thing that was going to be the consumer friendly option, be the consumer. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the savior for the consumer in these situations has that is just completely that mask is off now, right?
Yeah, and in fact, it turns out that the mask was barely there. It was kind of like they were dancing little fans or pieces of tissue paper in front of their faces.
Now, one of those shitty, like, clear, anonymous masks that you're just like, what is even the...
What's the point of it? I see that you're going to be an asshole when you take the mask off. No, but I at least had the courtesy to put the mask on.
Right.
I don't know, but it'd be nicer if you were just honest from the
You
start.
want to know the weirdest thing in all of this stuff is Google Play Movies is and TV
going
is
away.
going away.
What the fuck is that about?
Right. So I got an email. So surprise, surprise. I have a lot of stuff through them, right? Like I've tons of Google product in the house. We've talked before about how my entire house is like a Google ecosystem. So like a lot of the stuff that we buy and watch, just by that very nature of like is through those services. And they sent a huge long email explaining that we were not going to lose anything. That Google is just kind of folding everything in together into a Google store essentially. And so all of our purchases will still be available there. We just won't have the app Google Play Movies, Google Play, that sort of thing. So I'll be very curious to see what happens because like one of the big things that happened over the last year, I don't know if we talked too much about on this during Sundance, but I had to upgrade to the latest Chrome cast. I had to go out and buy a high-end one because the 4K high-end Chromecast that was not the highest end that I got with my Stadia last year wasn't playing the streamable stuff from Sundance. And when we looked deeper into it, it turned out that the way that Sundance was streaming their stuff through whatever service they were using, it was using like a specific proprietary system that was that Google only allowed access to through their highest end Chromecast. And so we had to go out to go buy this high end one so that we could watch this stuff that we had already bought all these tickets to, and just assumed that with all of the streaming shit we already had in the house, we'd just be able to stream stuff like we had done in previous years. But no, they had somehow wrapped up this Sundance stuff in this like high end I don't know if it had to do with bitrate or what, but like some weird caveat that required that we needed to get the highest end thing. That's fine, whatever. We go out and we buy the new Chromecast. The new Chromecast is so much more like an Amazon Fire Stick now. It has its own interface now on it. Mm-hmm. You can watch stuff directly through it. It came with a controller. The controller has proprietary buttons on it for YouTube and Netflix and things like that. All of this stuff, right? So it turned my TV into basically a Google machine. So, like, if I wanted to watch Mario over the last year, sorry, not to name a movie, but if I wanted to watch a movie over the year, and I went to that to go buy it, it was just buying it through the Google Play Store. If I wanted to watch a TV show, if I wanted to access YouTube, if I wanted to do everything, it was doing it all through this interface that I then... not 12 months later, receive an email saying, by the way, all that shit you've been doing that we forced you into at the beginning of the year in order to use this service, yeah, we're taking that away now. It's going to become this other thing. And it's like, don't worry, we're not going to take everything away entirely. But I'm like, what the hell does this mean for the shit that I just had to buy? Does that mean that entire stick is useless now? Does this mean that's gonna update into something else? Am I gonna have to go buy another thing? Like, what does that mean? So like tying their entire service to a physical device has like Amazon, like this is they're not the first ones to do it, but I've always talked about how they were avoiding that part of the equation. Well, they finally bought into that, and then in that same year, they've upended their service.
Yeah.
So
I
I have
mean,
no idea what's going on there.
yeah, it's not, it just doesn't look great. Something you mentioned in all of that triggered a memory for me in terms of, and I've lost it because it was like such vitriol anger at one of those things you just mentioned.
The Amazon Fire Stick has pissed us off many a time,
Well,
and it's
yeah,
why we don't use one anymore. I bet it had something to do with that,
we
though.
moved away from that. It was something else that you had mentioned, and it's okay. It's all this stuff that's going on that is just I don't I don't know how to feel about it. Like I never was one who like bought into the whole streaming thing as like this is going to be forever and it's going to be the best service ever. I knew that there had to be caveats with it. And again, it's because like I wanted to watch a certain movie that wasn't available on Netflix and has never been available on Netflix, and I'm just like, okay, so I have that in the back of my mind, right? It can't be this Paramount, sorry, where everything is going to be there. There are always going to be limitations, but
Yeah,
now
there's
the
always gonna be gaps, sure.
limitations seem so much more self-made as opposed to just the outcome of everything that's going on. I mean, I
Yeah, well, I
guess
think part of it is that we've lost the thread a lot in that like Netflix and Hulu when they came on the scene, they weren't one of the big companies, right? Like they were a third party coming into the conversation between us and the shit we wanted to watch, and they were saying we can help here. The second that you had these companies themselves doing stuff, and it starts with Amazon, but the second that you have like these companies that are making the content also now being in charge of streaming the content, it became a different ball game. And at that point, it stopped being fun to watch.
yeah, I just and then to feel it this way with gaming in terms of like we just had the Shredder's Revenge DLC, we talked about it last week, come out.
Hmm.
I've bought that game on the PlayStation and the Switch, but I also played through it on the Xbox. And I'm like, part of me wants to get the DLC, and I'm like, no, don't, because you don't own the game. You're
Right.
gonna buy the DLC, and then they're gonna pull it off a Game Pass for whatever reason. And
Yeah,
then they just
and
got
then what do you
$7
got? You've got
from you
this.
for nothing. Like what?
Uh-huh.
Like I think I'm just
That
gonna.
happened to me with a Telltale game for a little bit. Batman, specifically the second Batman Telltale game. They gave away the first chapter of it for free to just everybody. It was just like I think it might even still be free. Like if you go looking for it, you can get the first chapter, and it's kind of how they hook you on those games. Is they give you the first chapter free, and then you can buy the entire package to get all the stuff, right? Well, what had happened with that one was I really liked the first chapter. I bought the other chapters, right? I hadn't really played it though. I went to go play it one day, and it was after kind of a lot of the Telltale like flare up had died down, like when all the stuff came out about them like super like pushing people past their limits and things like that because they were just basically cranking out content nonstop all of a sudden, which was dumb because they were still a small studio, right? Like they mismanaged themselves into oblivion. But in that time, what I hadn't realized was that a lot of the right stuff had been pulled. So if you owned stuff of theirs on like Steam or PlayStation and things like that, you could still play it. Like if you owned it and it was downloaded, kind of like the PT problem, right? If you
Mhm.
had downloaded PT, you always had access to PT, but you would never be able to download it again. Well, that exact thing happened with Batman. I wasn't able to get into the game and play it because that first chapter also houses all of the like mechanisms to get the game going. Like to even open the game, you need to own that first chapter. And I couldn't even go and buy that first chapter because it wasn't available at that moment and it wasn't licensed, so I couldn't start it. And so I had access to chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5, but not the first one, which was the one I needed. And like that sucked. That really sucked. Because in that case, it's not even that you're given a choice. Like I said, those first chapters are always free. So it's not even an option at that point, right? You just say, yes, give me this, and then you can download it. But if they say, sorry, this isn't available right now, well, you never bought it, so you don't have it.
Yeah, no, a lot of anti-consumer stuff. It feels like in the world of gaming right now. And again, like I want to play Sea of Stars, but then I'm like, do I want to continue on this Game Pass version? Where like honestly, a big part of me is saying, I think we're gonna be separating from this system, this game service, because we're not using it the way that we were using it. And I mean, I ended up buying Infernax on Xbox when they have like a 2-player mode that they added at the beginning of this year. And you know how much I loved Infernax, so I wanted to try that again. And I'm like, but the only place that I have like all of my save file stuff, and I mean like my 200% clear of Infernax, is on the Xbox. So it felt like, well, I want to continue with it. I want to keep playing that. So I'll buy the game there and I'll buy the DLC. And I don't want to do that again. I don't. That doesn't interest me with these other games that I have. I don't know. And, and then what it is the discontinuing of the Google Play Store. I mean, that made me fearful of everything that I have on Amazon. Because, like, that's just where I do it. Because a lot of the time, the stuff that you purchase there is, like, Movies Anywhere compatible. So you'll also
we're
get it
getting
on your
closer
Movies
every
Anywhere
day.
account.
We've already seen it happen in video games, right? Who was it that was pulling purchases that people already had paid for? Was it the EA store or Ubisoft or somebody? But I mean, like we've seen companies already starting to pull material that like you paid money for, but it's like, sorry, this just doesn't exist anymore. And they use the excuse, and it's a somewhat valid one. There's definitely an argument to be made of like, it's no different than buying a game for Super Nintendo. And as you grow up, at some point, that Super Nintendo is not around anymore. If you still own the game, like that's great. But if you don't have the system and access to it to play it, what do you like? That's just consumerism, right? And like I said, there's definitely arguments for and against that. That is a very faulty, like weak argument. But that is definitely the one that they lean on in those situations when you say things like, "How come I don't have access to this thing anymore?" And I think we're that much closer to that happening on a larger scale with something like Amazon. I think Google's the closest we've gotten so far, but they were very quick to assure all of their people that they were not going to lose access to stuff they owned. But we'll see how long that goes. A lot of the stuff that I own on Google is like weird shit. Like I own 5 episodes long shows that died off and don't have endings and things like that. Like I went to Google to get that stuff because they were the only place I could find it. And so like if they pull it, I don't even have the option of going somewhere else to buy it or ever seeing it again. That's just going to be gone. So and to the point of them reformatting and stuff, how long are they going to hold on to silly shows like that? Because that was kind of the joys of the early days of Netflix, right? Early days of Hulu too, where like there was weird shit being put up on there. Like part of the fun of those services early on was like you could go there and like that's where the weird stuff was. But that's not their image anymore.
Well, as we're on the 28th anniversary of the start of Kids WB, I will talk about all of the weird Kids WB content that used to be up on Amazon Prime that I was there and I would watch, and now this title is no longer available. Still shows up in my watch list because I added it, but I cannot watch it anymore. And that's disheartening because, like, well, this was the only place that I could get it because it was this weird, outdated show that ran for 1 season and had, like, probably 200 fans. So you guys had it, and that was cool that I could rewatch it, and now it's gone. And why would it ever come back? Like, what? Like, I don't. And if it did come back, it'd probably come back as a freebie show. And that is a whole other, like, can of worms in terms of the Amazon TV with commercials that we don't allow you to buy. You can only watch it through our network.
And they obfuscate a lot of stuff in terms of what is available where on Amazon. It's one of those things where if you dig just a little deeper, you can always figure it out. It's not hard, but if you're not the kind of person that even knows to start looking, like you could very easily find yourself in like some really frustrating situations of Amazon says it has this thing. I go to see it and it's not on Amazon. It's on this other service that's a part of them. It's on this Stars service. It's on this BBC service. It's on this
Acorn TV,
yeah, yeah,
baby.
right, right. So like this idea that like they have split themselves up into so many little compartmentalized boxes. It is like I don't use Amazon anymore. Like I really avoid it if I can. If I go and I look up and I say where is this streaming and the only place it's streaming is Amazon, then we will go to Amazon to watch a thing. But other than that, like I avoid it like the plague.
I mean, there's also the 50-50 there. It's streaming available on Amazon, and it may be included with Prime, or you may have to pay for
Yeah,
it.
you may have to buy it, right?
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's
But that's
available
what I'm
on
saying
Amazon.
is,
Like,
yeah, that Googling is
what?
only the first step in trying to figure out where the thing is. Then
Yeah.
once I figure out it's only on Amazon, that's when the digging begins where I have to try and figure out, but how, right? And then, but I don't think there's a lot of people that know enough to make that next step or care enough to make that next step of going even further. Like I know that there are some older people that are dealing with this kind of stuff, and I don't want to act like old people are bad at technology. That's what I'm dancing around. But there is definitely a certain amount of savvy like knowledge that like our generation and younger just kind of have. Our younger generations more than us even about just like how to figure this kind of shit out. And like if you don't have that knowledge, like the Amazon ecosystem now is a fucking frustrating desert of content, but content you don't seem to have access to. It's wild. It really is.
well, yeah, it's I'll use my father as an example. He learned how to use Netflix on the Wii. Like, that is how he learned how to stream. So then when it came time to, I want to be streaming, but we can't be using the Wii anymore, I'm like, well, the Apple Fire Stick is the most affordable. So we'll go there. So now he understands.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
What?
You said the Apple Fire Stick? Did I miss something?
I'm sorry, the Amazon Fire Stick. I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
I didn't
Yeah.
know if you went with
No.
an Apple TV or a
No,
Amazon Fire
I
Stick.
meant
Okay,
I
sorry,
meant the
keep
Fire
going.
Stick. Sorry. No, well, now we have an Apple TV in the house, and that was an Amazon mistake, where they marked down the third version for Black Friday when they were supposed to be clearancing out the second edition, and I was able to get an order in while the price was just incredible for the third gen version of the Apple TV. But again, like, I don't know if I would do it if I couldn't get it for, like, literally a steal is what it felt like.
Yeah,
I got
who's coming up smelling like roses and this whole thing is kind of Apple right now. And the only reason is it's not that they don't partake in some of this madness as well, but they really do stick to a formula that they themselves created long before these services existed, right? Like the when they first introduced the idea of buying music and being able to buy per track, not just CD and all of this stuff, and then episodes, TV episodes, you could buy singular episodes or you could buy the whole season, things like that, right? They've not really deviated from that. So it's not that they aren't also participating in a lot of this nonsense about like what's available when suddenly it's pulled. Do you still own it if you buy it? They've just been doing it for so long that they have a built-in audience of people. And some might say that some Apple people out there are a bit obsessive about loving the brand, but we're not going to go there. But this idea that like they have taught their audience kind of what you're talking about. They've taught their audience how they work, and by not deviating from that for like 20 some odd years now, like they end up looking really good in these situations when everybody else is burning to the ground. Apple TV is still just chugging along, and you're sitting here praising the Apple device and stuff like that because for all intents and purposes, they're just doing what Apple does, and like there's no there you can hate on Apple or not at this point. Everybody's kind of already gotten past that part, right? We're only kind of just discovering the flimsiness of some of these other services and these other companies, and that's why everybody's still up in arms about them, I guess. It's just interesting that like out of everything right now, I think that Apple might be the one service I think I would say you can still kind of depend on. They will still be Apple in the end, but at the end of the day, you know what you're getting into with them at least.
You can depend on them still being as shitty as they were in 2007.
Right.
Like, that's the issue of it. Like, it's just, I understand they were never quiet about the fact that, like, anything you buy from us, we reserve the right to take away from you.
Yeah, yeah, no.
So
It's
like,
part of the reason why I've never really quite understood the obsessive nature of some Apple fanboys out there, right?
yeah,
Is like they've never, as you said, they've never been quiet about the fact that they're just like, look, we're gonna fuck you every chance we get, but if you want to come on over and play with our toys, it's like, okay.
yeah, it's I don't understand it, but it's almost as if it's scabbed over so nicely that it doesn't bother us. Like it's as healed as well as it is. Yes, there's still a BB underneath the skin tissue, right? There's a BB
Yeah,
under the epidermis, and it's gonna suck going through metal detectors the rest of your life, but there's no further risk of infection,
yeah,
right?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of the devil you know argument, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's that idea that like it is that they are by no means perfect, but they are. We know pretty much how the game is played when it comes to the Apple stuff. And the thing about like Amazon and all of the and Max and all these other companies is it just feels like they keep changing the rules every fucking day. And so it becomes so frustrating and hard to keep up, and we feel blindsided when suddenly we realize we're paying $30 extra a year for a service that we aren't even really happy with, right? And things like that. It
Yeah.
feels gross.
I mean, frick, Peacock just raised their price, and it's like we have to have a discussion because oh my god, do we use Peacock for so much more than I like really thought we did? But at the same time, are we using it enough to justify going from $10 a month to $15 a month? Like
Yeah.
that's a big jump. That's $60 extra a year that goes to NBC Universal
Right.
for weirdly sort of the least safest place to get invested in their content because they have canceled stuff well before any of the other things. I didn't know that
Right.
there were two freaking reboots of the L Word that they did. Sorry to name something, but like I just need to talk. Like I can't believe that they've done two of those already. I just thought that it was the
Yeah, it's
one.
wild.
What the frick?
Well, yeah, yeah, and so we see this happening in video games, we see this happening in movies,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I am worried we are going to see some similar issues, but like very differently branded in the realm of books as well. Because while there is like a very big market with like ebooks and things like that on various services, the one of the biggest ways that people get access to reading in terms of the digital space and like services and right and being part of service consumer services is Libby. And like I don't know how much you use it, we use it a ton in this house, and with all of the talk that's going on with the ways that various libraries and stuff are like shifting around and the political landscape for what libraries are now being like a thing that I'm legitimately scared about in the year 2023. I just like I don't know how much longer even that service is going to be one I can depend on for things.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a strange place that we're living in, and it's not surprising. I can't believe that it's already happening,
But like
right?
Netflix killed Blockbuster, right? Like that's the joke, that's the story. That is kind of the truth,
It
right?
is the
The
truth.
streaming
Yeah.
service killed the video rental service, right? The problem is now like there isn't something else coming in that's better than streaming that's making streaming look bad. Streaming itself is making streaming look bad. What happens when these services do finally like give up the ghost on a bunch of this shit? Like, do we go back to a rental model? Is there a way to go back? I mean, those buildings are now gone. Those
Well,
companies
those
that existed
buildings are
are
still
just
there and vacant. So I don't know the last time you've been home, but the EP Hollywood Video. Well, no, I actually think they just made it a bank this past year.
Well, the EP Hollywood Video has been a bank for a while because my parents have banked there
Oh,
for
okay.
years. And the Blockbuster in East Providence became a laundry service within like a day after the friggin' place closed. I think they were actually doing laundry in the back of Blockbuster, not telling anybody. And then when they closed the front end of the store, they were like, "Finally, we can let our dirty secret out.
Yeah, I guess I think it's just
We
the
can literally
blockbuster.
air our dirty laundry."
Well, the Blockbuster in Coventry is still vacant. The Hollywood Video is now a bar. It's actually been 3 different types of bars. So, I mean, who knows?
But more importantly, the infrastructure of those companies doesn't exist anymore. That's what I mean by those buildings are vacant. Like, there's not like a Blockbuster headquarters building somewhere that's been sitting vacant for 20 years. Like, that building is not like that whole concept, that whole structure, the personnel involved, all of that. Like, there's nothing left of those companies.
Yeah, if rental stores were to come back, they would start as independent models.
Right.
And then someone would just make the money to build it up as a larger company. But again, I don't think that's going to happen. Like, at the same time as like that's the only path forward for it, I feel like you could only have independent stores. I remember there was a video rental shop that opened up in Cranston a couple of years ago, like probably 6 years ago at this time, and people loved it. And it was cool to go in there. And then like we went in there and they're like, yeah, we're closing. This is our last day. We didn't really
same thing happened right out here. We had one Top Hat Video here in Bountiful, Utah. Yeah. They just closed their doors because they just couldn't keep it going.
Yeah, it's not conceivable to do it anymore. I don't know. And as somebody who, like I said, there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about. Like 80% of that stuff that I dealt with that I can't talk about right now because of the solidarity like block that we've put on the show. All of it was rental stuff. All of it was rented. And I felt like weird about it, but I didn't want to shell out the money they were asking for me to own it, knowing that honestly, that's just a license too.
Right. There's really not a difference. You're just renting this one in perpetuity until they then decide we want it back.
Right.
It's the difference between them telling you when they want it back and just saying, well, we'll come get it someday.
At some point, okay, we'll take that back from you. With no compensation. So hopefully you watched it enough times to make it worthwhile.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I don't know. So, I honestly don't know. Vampire Survivors. I'll talk about that. That was my victory this morning. We could talk about gaming still for right now. How familiar are you with 8-Bit Dough and their product lines?
No, never heard of them. What do they do?
Okay.
What do they make?
So 8-Bit Dough kind of made their mark initially by creating Bluetooth receivers for the NES and the SNES. So you could like play with a PlayStation 3 controller. That's how far back it goes on, your NES or your SNES. So
that's super cool.
You don't need to go find these old controllers. You can use a controller you're using every day with this older stuff. And then as the company has grown, they have developed like reproductions of pretty much every type of controller. I want to say at least through the 5th generation. That seems fair. Actually, I don't think they've done an N64, but still. They've done NES, SNES, TurboGrafx, Genesis. Though, actually, I don't know if they've done Genesis. I think Retrobit, which is another company, actually has the exclusive rights to that. But the TurboGrafx one, like, that's cool. Like, I have a modern style, like, modern created TurboGrafx style controller. And that's very cool to me. They just did Neo Geo. Like, that was the one that was really big deal. They did a Neo Geo CD style controller that had the clicky sort of analog stick for the directions, and then the buttons were the size. Like, so that's what 8-Bit Dough does. But in addition to doing recreation versions of the older consoles, which I was not a big fan of, I bought the Super Nintendo ones because, I was playing a lot of Super Nintendo at the time that they came out, and the D-pad itself was really poorly made to the fact that holding right, you might get an up or down. Like, it just could not differentiate very well. To the fact that, like, the solution is open up the controller and put electrical tape around the contact to make sure that it's only contacting the one that it's supposed to. That was their official, like, suggested fix. But they do their own sort of controllers, right? They've done a ultimate controller that is very good for the Switch and PC, and it can switch very easily between them with a physical switch on the controller to go from Switch to X input. Like, that's very interesting. But what I picked up this weekend is their newest version, which is the Micro, the 8-bit Do Micro. And it's about the size, and these are my hands, so the hands aren't a standard size. But if you hold up your hand and you close in your index and your pinky finger, the remaining ring and middle finger, that's about the size of the controller.
Oh, wow.
Weirdly, it's pretty comfortable. I have to admit that. It's kind of like using a Joy-Con, but the control pad, it's a D-pad, and the buttons are like separated just that little bit more, so it doesn't feel as cramped.
Oh God, that's so nice. I hate the Joy-Cons I hate them in Joy-Con mode. There's nothing, I see no benefit to them other than the ability to suddenly have two controllers, and that kind of thing, which is great. But man, I just despise the Joy-Con.
Yeah.
Specifically because of the layout. So it's cool to hear that they have actually tweaked that a bit. And this isn't a Joy-Con, right? Like
This
that's
is
not
not
what
a
the point of this thing
Joy-Con.
is.
No, it's by 8-bit Do. It's their thing. It can work on the Switch natively. That's what I did this morning. Those were where some of my victories were, and we'll touch on those because they're fun to share. Or it can work with the PC as either a D input device, or you can do it to your keyboard. So like for those games where you don't get to change the buttons, where like WASD is always going to be your move, you can go into the software that it comes with this and set up as W, left as A, down as S, and right as D on the actual controller. So it's acting as a keyboard, which is cool. Like, it's just this cool little thing. And I used it today to clear a bunch of stuff in Vampire Survivors because I'm like, let's try it out. Let's see how it's doing. And then I wanted to put it through like the mentioned Shell Shock. I didn't get a chance to do that. I want to definitely see how if I can Mario Kart with it. But the other thing that I did, and the one that sort of means more to me because there are like wicked precise movements that you need to do, is I did the Ninja Gaiden Special Edition that's included with the NES games for Switch Online that starts you right at the final boss. And I was able to beat the final boss on the first try. And that's not the tool, right? It's because I know how to beat the boss. But the thing where you hit down and the attack button at the same time to like triple the amount of times you can attack during a jump. I mean, I cleared the first boss in like less than 10 seconds. Because it can read it's very good at reading it. Which is even crazier when you consider that it's smaller than like an SNES size paddle, but that the up, down, left, right of the D-pad is that precise.
Man, I had such a shit experience with the controller and the Switch just yesterday. I was so mad. So it's getting into spooky season, right? And I'm slowly shifting a lot of my stuff that I'm doing, movies and TV that I'm watching and video games I'm playing, into some of the creepier stuff, right? Mainly it's because a lot of the stuff has started to go on sale and things like that, right? So one of the big things that's been on sale a lot lately is Crypt of the Necrodancer. And I've been playing the DLC, like it's called the amplified version, as well as they've got some other DLC that's out right now. But all of that on my computer, great. Been having a great time with that. In the past, when I've talked about Necrodancer, though, I've talked about how it's been like a really kind of fun and important game for like me and friends to play, right? So I wanted a version that was not just down in my bedroom on my computer. So I was looking at the Switch version. The Nintendo Switch version comes with the amplified stuff just baked into it. Like it is basically when you buy that Switch version, you're getting the updated version with it. It had access to other DLCs when they become available and things, and so I was just like, well, this would definitely be worth it. And I've bought this game so many times on so many other things because I love it. Like, I don't mind spending the money. And then lo and behold, it was on sale. I was like, oh, even better. It's only like $7, right? So I buy it, I get it going, and like, I can't play it. And this is a game that I have played on my PlayStation, on my computer. I was like, what is going on here? And I've played it on the Switch before. Something's going on with the way that it reads the Pro controller. I recalibrated it. I made sure my Pro controller was charged. All of this weird shit. But like, shit like my character's just not moving, and like they're not moving in a way that if you know how the game works, like you're moving to the beat and stuff. Sometimes it feels like it's like, oh, okay, it's uncalibrated. They're moving, but they're not moving when I expect them to move. So that's when I tried the recalibration. But even then, it's like, no, they're just not. It's not reading input. It's just acting like I'm not inputting with this, and I cannot figure out what the issue is. But it's only with my Pro controller. Hannah owns a third-party controller that's like that she wanted because it came with a clear purple plastic on it, and she wasn't having any issues on that. And like if you use a Joy-Con, it was doing okay with that. But as I just mentioned, I kind of hate the friggin' Joy-Cons. So like I'm just pissed because my Pro controller, the controller that I want to play with on when I use my Switch, it just cannot play this game, and I cannot figure out what the issue is.
That sucks. I don't really like the Necrodancer games anyway because I tend to play my video games without sound. So a game where I have to move to the beat without sound is not very easy to play. I will admit
No, not
that.
at all. Yeah.
I know that they have other ways that you can do it without the music, like visual cues and things like that. But also
They
like
also have characters that just don't
yeah.
need to worry about moving to the music, but that's not the point of the game, right? Like the point of the game is the idea of moving to the music is like
That's sort of how it's
sure.
designed. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
right,
and
right.
again, it sucks that it's kind of like there are people who that it makes it impossible to play for these things like that. So it's been a kind of a high bar to entry for the game. But then to think about a game like just not reading your controller, that would piss me off so much.
Yeah,
I'm sorry that you're
I
dealing with
can't
that,
figure
man.
it out. Like I said, it only just happened yesterday, so like I'm still kind of digging into it, but kind of ruined the whole like experience of buying the damn game and sitting down with some friends to play it when I was suddenly like, oh, like my controller, like my the thing that is like my controller whenever we play video games on the Switch is like just can't play this game. And it's like I can use a different controller, but I want to use mine.
Yeah, right? Our controllers become these weird reflections of us, these extensions of us. Like, you always have your controller, which is why I was, like, nervous to try using an 8-bit DOE again with the micro version. And it's, if you're familiar with the company, they have the Zeros that are out there. They're more rounded. It's a little boxier version of that, and it feels really, really good. And, like, they're not a sponsor or anything, but if you're looking for a nice small controller, if you're looking for something to, like, maybe replace your Joy-Cons because you got drift or things like that, this is a pretty solid solution. And I'm happy to admit that. I was nervous when I saw it. The colors online are wrong. That's the thing. If you look up the 8-bit DOE Micro, like the blue one and the green, they look a lot darker online than they are in person. The blue is almost periwinkle, and the green, God, the green looks like a spring day in your hand. It's like Easter grass. I don't freaking know. But it feels good
Sea
to
foam.
Yeah. It's not sea foam. It's not that, like, there's not that much white in it.
Okay.
It's
okay.
definitely a green and yellow mix, but it's like there's a little bit more yellow than green.
Interesting.
And it looks sort of like Luigi in photos. But, like, it's not chartreuse. Like, it's a little greener than chartreuse.
Okay, yeah, let's get into these nuances.
Well,
No, that's good to know
drink
though.
out
Like
of a
the
chartreuse
color,
drinking
color
mug,
may vary, right?
So, yeah. But it's still a good time, and it feels really good. And unlike with the Joy-Cons, you have both the L and ZR instead of
Nice.
just the one button. So that's important to know too for certain games. And even though it's a D-pad, it is programmed to read as a left stick. So if you want to play, like, I don't know, Link's Awakening is going to be my example here, where you have to move with the stick until you set it the other way. It works fine because it reads as a left stick. So you could play something like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild with it. You just wouldn't have the shortcuts of the D-pad, and you wouldn't be able to aim because you wouldn't have the right stick.
I often, just speaking about silly controller things that we do, I often will try a game after a while with the Super Nintendo wireless controller that Nintendo put out
Uh-huh.
last year or 2 years ago. I like once I get into a game enough where I'm like, okay, this could be fun for a day. Like I've done Breath of the Wild trying to use that controller, and it's always a fucking blast because it's always stupid.
Yeah. Well, I think the one for me was Cyber Shadow. That
Mm,
game was clearly designed to be played on an NES controller. Like
yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah.
the bindings that you can have on other buttons can be done with just the D pad and two buttons. So I have the NES controllers that slide into the Joy-Con slots, and I beat that game on one of those. To be
Nice.
like, I want to do it because the guy said I designed the game to be done this way. Which also, final thing with 8 because I've been just working with them and their products, they have a Bluetooth upgrade kit for regular NES controllers where you open it up and you just replace the board and now suddenly you have a Bluetooth controller. That's freaking cool. And there's like, you can buy like replacement shells and things. So I just built my own Bluetooth controller for my
Right, you
NES.
just buy the shells and then buy the board, and suddenly that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's fantastic, man.
So that's been a good time too. I don't know. Those are things that I've been doing that I can actually talk about.
Yeah.
So
Just, speaking about like different versions and going to the Switch and stuff too. I've also been playing non-freaking stop lately. I don't know what's gotten into me this time around, but I've been playing Inscription again. And I gushed about this game last year. It's still, I think, probably one of my favorite games of all time. It's so good, and like the evolution of that game for anybody that has played it, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, that game slowly becomes something else by the end of it, right? And the evolution of that game has gotten even deeper for me because I've always known that there was like beyond the game stuff, straight up like ARG, like real life shit that you could be doing, like looking into, going onto websites and things like that with that game. What I learned, and this explains kind of what's gotten into me with playing it so much lately, is that the different versions of the games have different pieces of the puzzle in them. So I've been playing because I was playing on my computer a bunch, and I've kind of broken that game on my computer like wide open. Again, like as if anybody that knows how that game works, like I've parsed out its secrets on the computer, and then kind of just was hitting dead ends. And I enjoy like some silly like ARG stuff. I enjoy like real world puzzle like figuring stuff out. I think that's really cool. I really like watching other people do it. I'd rather watch a YouTuber like walk me through it than do it myself, I think. But this is one of those times where I was like, I need to do this myself because I love this game so much. Um, but I did discover, as I said, different versions of it have different pieces. So then I went back to my PlayStation and did a couple of things, and sure enough, I found like one half of a YouTube like link there, and then like YouTube, and the ways in which it digs into your files and leaves stuff behind on your computer. It can't do that on a PlayStation. Or what I then learned was a Switch is the other big version that everybody's like, you gotta. That's like the last piece is you've got to go to the Switch version. So. So I've been playing the game on like three different consoles to try and like get all of the pieces of the puzzle together. So like that's been my week is has been a lot of that. And in terms of video gaming at least, between that and my Necrodancer sadness yesterday, I've been as I said trying to get into some weirder stuff. I don't know what this year's like new one's gonna be for me though. Like I like going back to stuff. I always play Resident Evil this time of year. I always, I think Inscription is just gonna be part of that rotation now going forward. But I always like to try and find something that I haven't done before, whether that's like a new Resident Evil remake or maybe some type of horror game that I've just like not touched on. I might check out Killer Frequency. I actually sent a copy to Zach for his birthday this summer and haven't heard anything about it since. He was like, "Oh, I was looking forward to playing this," and then that's the last time he said anything to me. And that could just be Zach just being Zach, or that could be that it was like a dud. So I need to talk to him about it and see. But Killer Frequency really kind of grabbed me this summer, and I just haven't gotten a chance to play it yet. But that might be a fun one to check out.
Killer Frequency, I think, is currently on sale on Steam.
Yeah,
As
that
like
makes
just
sense.
as a
Again, it's that
heads
time
up.
of the year.
Like,
Yeah, so yeah, like that totally makes sense. But I want to talk to him first and see what he thought
Yeah.
before I dive into that one because it's one of those games where so it's like a story-driven adventure style game where you're using clues that you're picking up to solve murders outside of the room you're in. Like that's the short and dirty version of what that game is about, right?
Yeah.
If that game is a dud, then it's literally just you walking around a room. So I don't want to spend that money. You know, it's like if I pick up a game like a platformer or a shooter and it's a bit of a dud, there's still stuff to do. Like there's ways to explore and there's still fun that I can find even if I don't love the game. There's things about it I can love. This game doesn't have that cushion. If this game is a bummer, then I've wasted $40 or whatever it costs
Well,
with
so
the
it's
sale price.
$24.99 on sale, 20% off, $19.99. And that's just because I have it in my wish list.
Yeah.
And it's getting so, like, it's getting some praise to the fact that the radio stations that I listen to in the morning were talking about it. And, you know, they're
Yeah.
people who work in radio. So the 1987 set horror game in a radio station appeals to them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, but I've been holding back for that same thing. Where like if I'm into this, then I'll be into it. But if not, then I just kind of wasted my money because there is nothing else to fall back on, right? It's just the
Right.
puzzle. I've been really, really gun shy with adventure games since I can't even think of the freaking name of it. Thimbleweed Park. Is that the name of it?
I know you tell me, man. Thimbleweed Park.
It was Ron Gilbert, I believe. Is that it? Thimbleweed Park. Oh, that was fun. That it came up and then it went away.
A point-and-click
Park.
adventure game developed by Ron Gilbert and Gary Winnick for Linux, Mac OS, PlayStation 4, Nintendo Switch. Yeah, okay. So this is a relatively recent game. I mean, it's got a lot of really good reviews. It's a 9 out of 10 on Steam.
Yeah,
What's
and
up
it's
with
Ron
it, though?
Gilbert. It was so big that it turned me off. I wasn't expecting there to be like 8 different adventure games in the one package.
Oh, okay.
So like there's a lot of content there, but it was when I was playing through and then suddenly I read a diary and got stuck in an adventure game that I had to clear before I got back to the story proper, where I'm like, what the hell? I wasn't expecting this. And it just was like, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it the way that I've enjoyed other adventure games. So then I did do the final Monkey Island game, Return to Monkey Island, I think it was, the one that came out last year. And I beat that one, and I wanted to be excited for that. But then, like, we had plans to talk about it. Zach Dyer and I were going to do that stuff on one of his shows. And then, like, the game was just kind of boring. Like, I feel like I've grown out of, like, loving adventure games the way that I did. I don't know. It made sense as a kid because there was like nothing to do. But now that you're
that's what I'm saying is there's such a big risk in that kind of style of game where if you as a player, right? I won't put this on like the creator of the game because people love game. There's always an audience for a game. No matter how much one of us might not like it, there's always somebody out there that does, right? But if there's not something in that game that can really hook you and get you moving, like I said, there's just nothing else to be doing in that game, right? Whereas one of the biggest things that I praised Tears of the Kingdom about is that I would hit stuff in that game. It wasn't like it was like every story was perfect. There were boring stories that I ran into that game, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. So then I just didn't and went and found other stuff to do, and I found more fun in that game because it was available. That's just not something that these games have. They're not built that way. They're not built to have that kind of thing. But that makes them all the more riskier as a player because if I don't like this game, then that's it. I'm just never touching it again.
Yeah. It's built to be that singular experience, and if you don't like that experience, and I think like weirdly that's why Thimbleweed Park didn't work for me. Is I was really invested in the sort of Twin Peaks where I'm sorry about that. Sort of where FBI agents were here to solve this mystery, and like they finally pulled us out. It just kind of touched on all of these things in like media that I enjoyed from the 90s and the 2000s. And then like that all went away because I clicked on one book in one room.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, I don't care about this. Can I get back? And it's like, you have to finish this to move on. And maybe I didn't have to finish it to move on, but that's what the game said. And on
Right.
some level, I get it, right? Because the first character who's reading the book, that's them. That's like a physical representation of them reading the diary and
Right. If you don't
experiencing
finish,
what. Like,
right. If you don't finish it, then what is it that they've gained by that action? It seems like, yeah.
yeah. So it just, I don't know. I was excited because it's Ron Gilbert, right? And I like that stuff, but Thimbleweed Park didn't work for me, and I've never gone back to it from that first time that I've played. Return to Monkey Island, I beat it twice. I did it on the hard mode, and then I tried it on the easy mode just so I could compare the two. And at the end of the day, I'm like, well, both of these really like feel like I'm going through the motions. And if you complete that game, you unlock like a dev diary, and Ron Gilbert in it talks about how each of the Monkey Island games are a reflection of where he was in his life. And honestly, this last one feels like we just need to do it to be done with it. And I'm like, oh, so you literally were going through the motions. Like, the way I felt playing the game, that's how you felt making the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, interesting, but also ultimately a little disappointing. But yeah, so Killer Frequency is something I'm looking at, but I'm just so nervous to, like, try it.
Yeah, but like at some point you also just kind of have to pull the trigger on stuff too, right? I'm actually seriously sitting here considering checking out Thimbleweed Park. I think part of it is also that like you didn't have that knowledge going in, like this is what this game is going to be. Now me having that knowledge, I am prepared for that, and like I can look forward to that as opposed to being caught off guard by it, right?
I was expecting Maniac Mansion, and I got something completely different from it.
Right.
So I understand that. So I mean, if you like a good point and click adventure game, there's a lot of content to be there.
Yeah,
but I personally was not prepared for it. And that's me.
I'm intrigued by the phrase "a dead body pixelating under the bridge." That is all over their marketing for this game. So
yeah.
wild. Yeah, I don't know, man. I've been reading, like one of the big things that I've been doing to try and not get caught in a bunch of stuff, like especially with the streaming stuff just kind of rubbing everybody the wrong way right now. But I dove into I got a new, my weird like true history but like fucked up history like slant that I just can't seem to shake. I picked up a book called the Icepick Murders. No, what is it? But it's by Sam Kean, and it is all about the ways in which medical science and science in general has really like pushed certain people to just just terrible ends, right? And like this idea of like the morality that has to go hand in hand with science. Yeah, it's the Icepick Murders by Sam Kean. But it's
the Icepick Murders or the Icepick Surgeon.
The Icepick Surgeon. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from across the room, and I'm saying so. Yeah, the Icepick Surgeon. But like it opens up with like this. He says immediately this is a legend. Like this is something that we cannot verify. But the oldest instance of science malpractice that we have is the legend of Cleopatra supposedly experimenting on midwives that were like maidens and things like that were basically, if they were going to be sentenced to death, she would get them impregnated and then at certain states in the pregnancy kill them and dissect their bodies to just learn about them, right? And it's very much geared towards, the story is very much geared towards her basically performing abortions. It starts to sound like eerily familiar that like this story that is by all intents and purposes not true. It's just supposed to be this thing that people said about Cleopatra, because I didn't know this, but a lot of people talked a lot of shit about Cleopatra when she was alive. Like one of the biggest things that she dealt with in her lifetime was basically people spreading rumors about her, trying to reduce her influence. And so this is probably just one of those. And like what they use in this story in order to reduce it to her influence to make her look truly evil is they lean into this idea of her performing abortions, which is like this like wild thing to look back that far back in history and seeing that being used even then, right, as like a a way that people like try and sully another human, is talking about that type of subject matter, right? And then that's what the book kind of like evolves like from, right? Like it talks about how over time, like science has always kind of had these moments where like just terrible shit has happened, and like what do we do with that science as we like once we move on, right? Like I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we know about like sexual transmitted diseases that the only reason we know that is because certain people in history like gave those diseases to people to watch what would happen. Like how do you know, how can we feel comfortable with like the ways in which we treat syphilis when we know the history of syphilis, right? Or like apparently I didn't know that a lot of our knowledge about things like hypothermia came from the Nazis, and we all know how they got their information, right? Like how do we apply that knowledge knowing where it came from, right? And then like that idea of like how do we trust science again, you know? And it's a really interesting book to be reading right now, as like as I kind of talked about earlier with the ways that like the political landscape is looking at things like science right now. Like how do we how do we square that circle, right? Of like, there's a lot of people out there that now really take issue with like government funded science because of everything that went on with COVID. Like, can we ever come back from that? And this book is all about like ways in which that kind of stuff has really kind of always been there, and we've always had to move past that stuff. And how did we do it before? Where did we see where those lines were? How do we prevent this stuff from happening again? It's a very, very interesting read. It's just also very dark.
Yeah, no, I'm probably not going to put that one on the wish list, but it's cool to know that that information is out there. And yeah, you're not wrong. It is something that has unfortunately always existed, and it's something that we as a society probably do need to come to terms with on a level. I mean, like, and just not because it's already existed, but like, there does need to be some broken eggs to make the omelet of science, right?
Well, that's
Experimentate,
the
like,
well, so that's the whole thing, right? Is like that is always what these people seem to say in these instances. But one of the more interesting things is Kean points out that more often than not, the second that you start doing bad things in order to get your results, you're then getting bad results. A lot of the time, the information that we do end up getting from these is not good information. It's just more information. That doesn't, and we have to stop equating more with good, which is a real problem in science. Like science itself perpetuates this idea that any amount of information is worth it.
yeah,
And he's
all
like that,
data is
and that,
good
and
data.
we just
Yeah.
know that that's not true. We know that that's not true because more often than not, in the stories that he specifically points to, he points out how like, yeah, they found this information out in this way, but they A, didn't have to. There were other things they could have done, and B, because they got it in this way, they got the results like they got the context of the results all fucked because they use these terrible methods. Because what did the Nazis learn? Well, they learned like, oh, okay, this is how hypothermia works in the body. But what did they use with it? What did they do with that knowledge? What was the contextualization of it? Is these Jews are weak because this happens. The German body doesn't behave this way. This is the way the Jewish body behaves, and it's what makes the German body superior. And you're just like, well, fucking what? Right? It took years of other better scientists looking at this material and actually saying, okay, but here's what this actually really means. It took people coming in to correct that shit, right? And it's like, yeah, so do we throw the baby out with the bathwater, like, and just say like any science conducted by heinous people just should not be looked at? Or do we admit that there is information there that we can then use to maybe get better information in other ways, right? And you know, like that's questions about like what is more honorable to the victims of these things? Like, is it more honorable that their deaths and their suffering might have been worth it for this better result, or is it more honorable to them that we never acknowledge the people that hurt them again, right? Like it's a really interesting moral conundrum that again science has always kind of had to tackle with, and a lot of people like to act like science is above morality, but it simply is not and never has been.
Yeah, wow. Jeez. I don't know. I do not know on that one. I don't think I could read it. I already kind of feel kind of gross in my stomach.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it is a super well written book. It is super fascinating. I think Kean does really good research and really good creative writing to kind of couch that research in like a really comfortable way. So, like, if you're into these kind, I mean, if you like true crime novels, if you like that kind of reading and writing and stuff, this is definitely a book I would recommend to people. I don't think it is a bad book by any stretch. The content, the material itself is harsh though. So, like, yeah, for sure, I would, that is where I would hesitate to just recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, but I mean, like
I also
that's
got a book on whiskey. I got a book called Pappyland, all about Pappy Van Winkle, about basically the history of its creation and why it is so like exclusive. You know, they do the whole like auctioning off certain amounts of bottles every year. There's finally a bottle back in Utah. It hasn't been for years, but there's finally one bottle of Pappy Van Winkle available in Utah.
are you gonna do it, Sejohn? Gonna
Am
pull
I
the
going to put in
trigger?
for the state lottery to see if I could be the one to own it? No, I
Yeah,
don't think I have the $800 I think the bottle costs or whatever it is.
yeah. I don't. I mean, all I know, I always thought Pappy Van Winkle was fake because it was always used in comedies. And I'm like, oh, that's
Yes.
a funny name for like an exclusive beverage.
Oh, it's like Red Apple cigarettes, right? Like
Yeah,
you're like that's not a real product, but like one person created that, and now every creator out there just leans into it, right?
yeah. So you hear that in what is supposed to be a comedy. Oh, you got the Pappy, and it's like, yeah, well, that can't be real. But no, it is, and it's very
Yeah, yeah.
exclusive. Actually, that's one of the rabbit holes I went down last year. Was like I learned that it was real, and I'm like, oh, that's new.
Yeah, well, and what's cool is you're in an area where it probably like I think there's still a limited stock of it, right? Like that's kind of its whole thing. Part of the reason why we haven't had it in Utah is that combined with all of our weird laws about imports and things like that. We've got so many weird, specifically involving alcohol. To finish that thought, but like we have so many different weird rules about alcohol in this state and about what can be brought in and how it's brought in and how pretty much everything has to go through the state in at some point. It's crazy. Like, I mean, you know, there are people I know I know actual like smugglers in this state that are actual honest to goodness people that like that this is what they do in their retirement is that they, you know, they're these older rich folks that they have retired from their businesses that they owned out here. They are very well off. They go and see the world and they've always brought stuff back from wherever they go, including alcohol. And it just occurred to them at some point that like they could start taking orders from their friends and family on their various trips to then bring back in all of this stuff that people just don't have access to out here. And this is just what they do. And like, it's a business, and that's where it starts to become a little bit more shady, right? Like buying stuff for your friends and family, not weird, but the second you start actually putting together like orders and like making money off of it, like, yeah, this bottle costs $80, I'm gonna charge you $100 to go and get it, like that's when it starts to be kind of but that is and this is not just one couple I'm talking about. This is something that a lot of older couples out here do is they retire and they realize that there's like something that they can do that's kind of exciting in their life, which is driving over state lines to buy a bunch of booze.
I feel like you're writing the next big AMC show with this. Like you're
Yeah,
pitching
yeah,
it right here.
starring like Diane Keaton and Bryan Cranston or something, right? Like
No, it wouldn't have Bryan Cranston. I'd like to see Ted Danson do something again.
Ed dancing again, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, no, it's like yeah. So Pappy Van Winkle, part of the whole like mystique of it out here is that the state just legitimately was just not allowing a bottle of it in for a couple of years. Like it was just not gonna happen. Like, you know, the whole auctioning part of it was already kind of weird to people out here. Like they don't kind of grok that. They're not on board with a lot of the things involved in that. And then, you know, add to that all the weird rules about bringing stuff in. So you're in this weird place where like it is probably conceptually more readily available to you, but because of the whole nature of it, of them keeping it under wraps for and all that, like it's still not any easier really for you to get a hold of it than it is for me.
yeah, no, I don't really want it. I'll admit that. I am a big fan of just buying the cheapest stuff because the goal is to get drunk. I remember the $5
You just be
bottle.
drinking to get drunk. We're not 20 anymore, man.
Right, but I mean, I haven't lost that. I mean, I don't really drink all that much, but if I do drink,
Yeah.
I kind of want to. I want to get the feel of being drunk. Right, finding that buzzed state is really good. Right.
No,
And,
right. There's a reason why people drink alcohol. There's a reason why people smoke cigarettes, smoke weed. Like you're not. You have other alternatives. There's a reason why you're choosing that one, right? Like there's a reason you're drinking whiskey and not drinking Coke, and part of that is because of the feelings that you get from both are different. And like Coke also gives you like a weird chemical buzz that is something like endorphin rushes and stuff like that. Like the nostalgia of drinking a fountain soda is in and of itself can become addictive, right? Like, but alcohol just has a lot of worse
oh yeah,
consequences,
yeah,
right? Soda will rot your teeth out, but like alcohol will like make you crash a car. So like there's definitely one that's
there
safer
are
than
levels,
the other, right?
yeah. And again, like there are times where like yes, I'll get something really nice and I'll sip it and I'll savor it, but a lot of the time, I mean, it all goes back to that gross $5 bottle of tequila from 2010. When people are like, oh, nobody's going to drink that. And I just killed the bottle and handed the person who bought it $5. And I'm like, it was gross. It did not taste good at all, but it's going to do what I want tequila to do.
Yeah.
And on this Cinco de Mayo, $5 as the cost of admission was worth it.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. No, yeah, there's definitely something to be said about how at some point you are so gatekeeping this thing that it is beyond me, right? I'm kind of in that same boat with this kind of shit too. I think it's a fascinating story, but at the end of the day, I don't expect I'll ever get to taste it, and I do not. It's not like a goal in my life. I would not like cut off my right finger just to taste some Pappy Van Winkle. That's just not going to happen.
well, it's a shame you say that, Sejohn, because I was going to offer you but a dram of Pappy Van Winkle for your right pinky finger.
It's like, what kind of Hitchcockian nonsense is this?
Yeah. You know what? There's one other thing I'd like to talk about, if we can, and it's Mortal Kombat 1, the 12th game in the series, that is releasing on September 19th, unless you buy the premium edition of the game, well, you will get it 5 days earlier on September 14th. Sejohn, do you know what the price difference is between the standard and premium edition of the game?
I mean, if the standard edition is running in the 60 to 70 range, I have to imagine the premium is probably like 90.
See, that would make sense to me, right? Like $20 over, I could kind of get behind. $10
you get a bunch of
maybe.
Right, you get a bunch of extra shit, plus you get early access, and in fighting games, that seems to be a pretty standard thing that they've been doing nowadays.
I mean, that early access in a fighting game, especially if there's an online component, that could make or break somebody who's like going to be competing professionally or even just as an amateur in tournaments.
Oh yeah, no, it
will...
is actually kind of gross. Like because it is such that 2 weeks more experience in that game is going to be a legitimate like.
Well, it's 5 days, but
concern
still, yeah.
for
huh? It's 5 days.
5 days. Sorry,
yeah.
That 5 days early access is going to be a legitimate concern for anybody that wants to take this game quote unquote seriously, right? Like I am not a fighting game guy. We have talked about this many a time, but I do respect the fighting game life, right? And so, like, I respect the hustle, and man, they are taking such advantage of the hustle with that, like, 5 extra days of access.
Yeah. So the standard edition of Mortal Kombat 1 is $70. $70 base, $69.99. The premium is $119.99 or $120. It is $50 more dollars.
Whoa.
$10 a day to get to play it early. You're also getting all of the first season guest characters. So you can also look at it as $10 per character being paid up front, and as a bonus you get that. You also get some skins and things. But that price difference, I'm not afraid to admit right here, I gave me sticker shock. I blanched for real.
Is that not going to be available after the 5 days? Because, like, what happens once that's no longer part of the package?
That's the thing. Can I get it 5 days later on release date? because I'll still get those 5 guest characters that are to be released. They've all been announced. We know who they are.
First seasons for fighting games, because that's how these things work nowadays. First seasons for fighting games are usually only like $30, aren't they? Like $50. Like seems like an immense amount of money for just a season's worth of material.
Like I said, it's taking advantage of that lifestyle and that hustle. It is that amount is insane to me. Yeah. I'm not ashamed to say that. Like it did. What? Because I was considering. I'm like, I want to play Mortal Kombat 1. I'm on board for it. It looks very interesting. The way that they're rebooting the universe after what happened in Mortal Kombat 11 is very interesting to me. The characters that are coming back, it seems very cool. Some of the people they got playing, roles in the game is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. But like that, and I'm like, yeah, so let's look at it. We'll get it early. We'll get to play through it. We won't be stepping on like later releases that I care about this month that are going to be coming out. Let's look into it. But to pay almost double the price for the game, I just don't see
just to have 5 extra days and some DLC fighters that they'll eventually throw into a package for $10. Like, what? No.
Yeah, I don't know, and I'm curious to see how things shake out with it, which is one of the reasons why I'm bringing it up in this episode, so that we can see what the sale figures are like in those first 5 days. Because I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking back to when Killer Instinct kind of reshaped kind of the molds, like back in the like 5-6 years ago, where their whole thing was the game is basically free, but what you're paying for is you're just buying characters, and so like you could get an initial package for like, I think it was like $40, and it came with a certain number of fighters, and then I think it was $10 a fighter after that, but you had gotten the whole game basically for nothing. You had paid $40 and gotten 4 fighters, and then every fighter was $10 after. The math kind of worked in that regard, right? And it didn't feel exploitive. Also, it was Killer Instinct coming back, and so there wasn't like a huge Killer Instinct scene that they were like. There definitely was, but like it's not like it didn't feel like they were taking advantage of a large amount of people like with just one like big fell swoop like this does. For Mortal Kombat to turn around and basically use that model, but also charge full price for the game coming right up and all that shit, like that just feels really weird. I don't know.
You'll have.
Yep. I'm excited. Like I don't want to get too down on Mortal Kombat, because we've talked many times about how well Mortal Kombat, specifically this late era of Mortal Kombat, has really done by fans, by like in the ways that it's told story and the characters that they've brought in, and as you mentioned, like the stuff going on behind the scenes, the actors that they've brought in, and the writing that they've had done and all that stuff. So like there's a lot that I really enjoy about Mortal Kombat. To see like a shitty marketing decision come in like this and fuck with a thing that I respect sucks.
Yeah. That's really where it boils down to. I mean, Mortal Kombat 11, after Mortal Kombat X, which I did buy and play, I don't remember it at all. Not in the ways that I remember Mortal Kombat 9. Like, X was just like such a whirlwind, and I never really went back to it. So as a result of that, for Mortal Kombat 11, I just went over to the Red Box, picked it up, and was like, I'm going to beat the story in a night. And I dedicated myself to doing it, and I did it. And like, I felt like I got the experience. And I was excited after seeing this one and all the depth it looks like they're putting into it to like buy another Mortal Kombat game. But now knowing that, what I now know, I don't know if I'm going to.
Yeah.
I just have to be honest about it. Because it seems like I don't get the replayability of a Mortal Kombat game. Street Fighter 6, which we played earlier this year, right? I finished the story, except for the final mission that opens up after you finish the game. But like that was fun. And there are people who hate the story mode because they're like, it's all just the same. And I'm like, yeah, but it actually brought me into the game and made me want to continue playing it.
Right.
Whereas, and not until I finished the story for Mortal Kombat is the same way. While I play the Mortal Kombat story, I'm super invested in it. But then once it's done, it's kind of difficult to get me invested to keep playing.
Yeah, I mean, so these are so you're talking about the single player experience versus the multiplayer experience. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is you were just much more invested in the single player experience of these games than you are in the multiplayer one, and like, and that's fine. Like, it's just you have to you acknowledge that that's not how these games work, right? Like, their bread and butter is the multiplayer experience. It's just not something you personally buy into, because like Mortal Kombat. And I think this is true for a lot of fighting games in general. They are the perfect genre of game for my friends to be into. If I can go over to a friend's house and play Mortal Kombat with them, that rocks. I don't want to be the guy that has to invest in Mortal Kombat in order for that to happen, though. I have other multiplayer games we can play. Like I want my friends to have Tekken. I want my friends to have Capcom versus Marvel. Like I want those games to be accessible to me at points. I do like them. I think they're well made, but I am so far removed from from that scene that like I can't be the guy that is the one that invests in those, you know?
Yeah. And I guess for a long time, it just, that part of it never really occurred to me. And then when I made other friends who cared about fighting games, I'm like, I can just rely on them. They're going to get it, and then I can play it at their place, or I can borrow it later on down the line. But
Right.
it is just such a weird line for me. Like Tekken 7, I talk about Tekken 7 all the time, and I was excited about Tekken 8 until I saw their answer to the story mode that Street Fighter 6 had, and I'm just like, all of my interest in the game has flown away, and I feel really weird about that. Like, I will admit that seeing what Tekken 8 is going to do to try to be like Street Fighter 6 does not appeal to me in the least.
Mm.
And it feels strange to say that, but like at this point, I want to experience the story, but then I'm not going to do anything afterwards, and I know that. So it becomes difficult for me to get invested, especially invested $120
Yeah,
in a
$120
game.
investment in a game that you're not going to really utilize yeah, what benefits do you gain from 5 extra days of playing the game?
Right.
If you're not going to be using that time to get better at fighting so that you can then go and kick people's asses online, what are you doing with that extra time?
Yeah. It's just to experience the story ahead of time. Does it matter? Like, you're going to experience it on release day and then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know how to feel about it. It's kind of bumming me out, and I thought it was worth bringing up because of that. Because it seems
I just think it's
like,
buck wild that you were excited about the story of Tekken 8, man. Those the Tekken stories are so fucking
no, no, no,
off
no,
the
no.
rails. Isn't
I
that the
was
series where they killed a character in the first scene and then by the end of the game that character's just not dead?
well, he's a demon.
The grandfather? Wait,
No,
are we talking
well,
about the same
that's the
character?
second one. No, the grandfather kills a guy at the beginning of the first Tekken, and then he comes back as a demon.
No, I'm talking about when they like blow up Grandpa Tekken there. What's his name?
Hayachi.
Yeah, Hayachi, when they blow him up in like this huge explosion in the beginning of like is it Tekken 3 or Tekken 4?
I think
And
it's
like
Tekken
you
4
and the
that
whole
does
thing
that.
is about how Hayachi is dead and now there's a power vacuum. And then by the end of the game Hayachi's just back.
He just wanted to try to draw out all the people who would unseat him so
Yeah,
that he could
yeah.
destroy them all in one fell swoop. It's not the story that bothers me about Tekken 8. It's that it's all going to be done through like chibi versions of the characters
Yeah.
literally competing in arcade tournaments. So kind of the stuff for like the Nexus part of Street Fighter 6, but
Okay, yeah.
without realistic looking characters, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any mode where you fight as those characters. Like, that was what was super fun about Street Fighter 6 to me. That added a level to it, being able to make my own character and
Right.
customize that character to be exactly what I wanted from a Street Fighter game.
Right, right.
So that going away, it's like, well, that's not it. Like, where Tekken 7, I liked the storyline of it, but I also, of the fighting games that I've played online, Tekken is the one I've done the most, and I do enjoy it. But then to add that whole, like, secondary level of, oh, you're at the arcade and you're playing in a tournament. And I'm like, I don't need this. I can just log online and play. I just don't know. It's such a weird feeling.
Yeah.
And especially, like, I think for both of them now, I'm probably going to go out and get a physical copy and then see if I can move it to somebody else who'd want the game and who can wait a couple of days.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Wild.
I don't know. It's just such a weird thing, and it sort of ties into the whole we are asking more money for things, and the things aren't really getting that much better.
Yeah, and I mean, like we've talked a lot today about like how things are costing and how we're still engaging with them and stuff. But I think the other side of this also is like part of the reason that all of this stuff is hitting as hard as it is everything is costing more money. All of these services are asking for more money, and people are also just not making enough. Like we can't keep up. Like we're like wages and financial like situations are just like at some point they're going to be asking for so much that nobody's going to be able to get on board, right? They cannot possibly survive as like boutique services, these streaming services, and like these and asking for this kind of money for like Mortal Kombat. Like I don't know, like unless like that sounds like something that normally they wouldn't advertise, but would be available at like if you went to like tournaments, they would say, hey, and if you want to spend this money, you can get the game 5 days early. Right? Like it feels like something that you would get at like what conference exclusives and shit like that, right? Like it sounds like that's what that you would have been. To put it out there as like an advertised price for everybody is nuts to me. Because again, like I don't know who out there in that situation. At the end of the day, you're just creating a financial gatekeeping for this thing that not everybody can take part in, and that's the grossest part of it all.
I mean, my question is on all of it. Come the 14th, if I go to a store, will there be a premium edition of Mortal Kombat on the shelf? Or
Right.
also, is this 120 premium edition only digital?
Yeah.
Like, will I have to wait still those 5 days to buy the premium edition in a store? I just have a lot of questions, and there have not been nearly enough answers.
I mean, they're not gonna allow the game to be on shelves 5 days early. That's just not gonna happen. That premium edition will be digital for those first 5 days. I will be curious to see what editions end up on shelves on the 14th. I think that's where you'll maybe see. Is there like a mid-tier edition that's out? That's like
there is the regular
$90?
and there's the premium edition. That is all that is out there. I
Yeah,
don't doubt that there might be separate editions once the game comes out, but what I can pre-order right now digitally is the standard edition for $70 or the premium edition for $120.
Man.
And it's weird to me because one would think that like there's probably going to be a physical version of the premium edition. And if I can go and buy that on the 14th, there's some more value there, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to put those games in the stores because why would the regular stock boy at Target not just put them all out on the 14th?
Exactly. They don't want to fuck with that. They don't want to accidentally let the game. And also, putting the physical game out 5 days early, like in 5 days, that's it. That shit's up online. And people will get it on day 4 and then not be buying it when it actually comes out on that Friday. Like they won't do that. There's too much risk involved in the game getting out physically early. But doing a digital download that they can monitor, essentially, that is something that they are apparently just buying into whole hog.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange time, Sejohn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or is it task time? Time to assign next week's tasks.
Oh, I thought we weren't doing tasks anymore.
No, we just didn't do it for this week because of Labor Day.
As of Labor
we took
Day.
the week off.
Then we could, yes. I think actually, though, I think there is something we could do. But go ahead.
All right. So I'll lead with mine. It is the most wonderful time of the year, much earlier than it has ever been before. The last time that this great event occurred was back in 2019. And in, the 2020 through 2022, probably because of the pandemic and also shortages of the certain items that go into them, Taco Bell did not have the rolled chicken tacos, but they are coming back. The menu refresh for September has the rolled chicken taco back, and I was able to get some this week. So here's what I'm going to do. It's a little navel-gazily, but it is this. We've done 2 episodes that are very, very, very much about the rolled chicken taco at Taco Bell. Not sponsored. They don't sponsor us. So I'm going to recommend that people go back and listen to either our 44th episode, The Rolled Chicken Taco Report, or our 97th episode, The Most Wonderful Time of the Year, because we're going to be talking about chicken tacos in some way, shape, or form next episode. And, it's interesting. Rolled Chicken Taco Report, I will admit, is one of my favorite episodes of this show. So us
you
going
bring back the task feature just to make people go back and listen to old episodes of the show.
No, not at all. The task feature, we said we were just taking it off for the week. I'm sorry if you misunderstood me when I said that. It's because it was Labor Day. No tasks this week. No, so that we can go back and listen. Again, and then, yes, you've rolled Chicken Taco Report. I'll admit it's one of my favorite episodes of the show that we've ever done. It's really like an origin episode of what the show has grown and become. But I know if we re-listen to it and revisit ourselves from back, 7 years ago, I don't know, I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I thought you were going to make everybody's homework to go out and just buy Taco Bell. So,
I mean, I can't say that. I mean, if you are feeling the rolled chicken tacos, we're in the golden age of it. So many dipping sauces at Taco Bell these days. But yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that the big one for me is going to be I need some help finding a spooky game. I want to hear what you like. I want to hear a game from you that you think I should play this, even if I've played it before or not. But I want suggestions, from more people if we get them, but specifically from you, Dev. I want to hear what it is you think I should try this spooky season. Because if we get this sorted out now, this gives me a couple of weeks to get the game and to actually play it, and then I will get to report back in a month or so what my experience actually was playing it.
All right, cool. So spooky games for Sejohn. We'll look through those. I hope you're bringing something to the table too. I mean, you kind of brought Killer Frequency this week, but I don't want to be.
Oh no, yeah, and I can definitely look into some stuff and see. I will put together a list. I won't make everybody put together lists. I just want one suggestion from you guys, but I'll see about putting together a good 5 or 6 suggestions.
Yeah,
that
I'll
we
put
can
together
kind of
there's already some that jump immediately to mind as the ones I like to play during the spooky season. So this will be fun. I think this will be a good time. All right. Anything else? Are you ready to close up shop this week?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
The strike goes on. And
yeah, the strike goes on, and God, we'll talk about it more next week. I think a little bit. This was sort of a thing. Hey, here I have one other thing to say. We've been joking about there not being new issues of People magazine. The death of Jimmy Buffett was enough to get them to do a new issue. So R.I.P. Jimmy Buffett. Even my father's like, you're gonna have a People magazine this week, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of crazy that that's what it took. It almost feels as if the magazine itself is going quarterly, which would be just a death knell for what that has always represented. But it was weird seeing one in it, confirming that my father is not crazy. He does have a People magazine subscription. They haven't been able to do it because there's nothing talking, right? But yeah, we'll talk about the strike and some of the things that were revealed this week now that once we had a week to, digest them a little bit. But until then, if you've listened to the show, if you've enjoyed the show, even if you didn't enjoy the show, we'd love to hear from you. We're doing that via email now, so it's thesayreport@gmail.com. Any of your questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, send it to thesayreport@gmail.com. And if it's specifically for me or for Sejohn, make sure you just write that somewhere, and I'll make sure that it gets to the proper party. I can do that sort of distribution without any fee. I don't know why I'm doing this voice.
I was like, what is this weird like Crypt Keeper's older brother that you started?
I don't know. I apologize. But until then, thank you for listening. We look forward to hearing from you. We'll see you next week. And Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report. And you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, We'll see you next time.